AM 560, The Answer.
The content and information on Real Estate Airwaves is for informational purposes only and should not be regarded as legal advice. Real Estate Airwaves does not provide legal advice and make no warranty or representation regarding the information on the show. Real Estate Airwaves shall not assume any liability for damages of any kind whatsoever relating to the use, misuse, or reliance of this information. The listener should conduct their own investigations, analysis, due diligence, draw their own conclusions, and make their own decisions. Any areas concerning taxes or specific legal or technical questions should be referred to lawyers, accountants, consultants, brokers, or other professionals licensed, qualified, or authorized to render such advice.
No fluff, no hype, no gurus. You're listening to Real Estate Airwaves on AM 560, The Answer. Get the inside information you need to find, fund, fix, and flip real estate in today's market. Joshua Ingalls and Vincent Pace share their secrets to minimize risk, maximize profit, and get deals done. We're pulling the curtain back and sharing the knowledge you need to succeed in real estate. And now, your hosts, Joshua and Vincent.
Thanks for joining us. Today we are going to be talking about how to analyze rental properties. The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. You're listening to Real Estate Airwaves. My name is Joshua Ingalls. I'm an active real estate investor. Over the last 3 years, I've flipped over 60 fix and flip deals. I'm also an active real estate broker with United Real Estate.
And I'm Vincent Pace. I head up Barnett Real Estate Investment Finance. We provide short-term financing for your real estate investment needs. We've lent millions over the past several years, and many of our borrowers do rentals.
A lot of times we've been talking about flipping properties, and again, flipping is great. It's a great way to have an influx of capital, but what do you do with all that capital that you make? A portion of that capital that you're making should be used to invest in purchasing rental properties. You know, flipping is a fun thing to do. It's great with before and after pictures. You know, everybody gets really excited about that. But true wealth is built in holding rental properties, and you really need to buy them right. So that way you have a good investment, and that's why we're really going to be diving into how to analyze rental properties.
So last week we spoke a little bit about knowing the lingo when talking about commercial deals. And one of the key things to know is the capitalization rate, or cap rate, as most will call it. A cap rate is a pretty basic calculation, actually. I think many of you are probably familiar with the calculation of a return on investment, which is simply you take the amount you get from the investment and you divide it by the amount of the investment, and you get a rate. And if you make $10,000 off of a $100,000 investment, you've got a return on investment of 10%. It's pretty simple. Cap rate is actually a similar concept, but it is sort of tailored to real estate properties where you're going to have income more than once. It's going to come over years. So what the cap rate is it's simply how much money you'll make over 1 year in the investment divided by the amount you need to invest. So it's a simple division problem that parallels very closely the return on investment calculation, with the main exception being it's not sort of a one-time how much are we making on this transaction. It is a look at a single year of how much you'll make. So you take, to work through the actual formula, your cap rate is just going to be your income divided by your investment. So let's dive into those pieces and figure out how those are actually calculated. So your income is going to be your net income. And what's net income? Net income is your gross income, which is actually the actual cash that comes in from any sources of revenue. Primarily, it's just going to be the rent you have on the properties, but there could be some other things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's going to be your gross income that comes in less your expenses. So when you're looking at your gross income, one thing that many will do is they'll actually kind of discount it by an expected vacancy rate. Banks, for instance, will often use a 25% vacancy rate. So they'll say, oh, if you expect to make $1,000 in this unit, well, we're going to call that $750 because you're probably going to have some vacancies over the course of the year. That's the kind of thing that you can do to kind of keep it a little bit more conservative. Now, other kinds of rental streams or income streams that you might find at a rental property could be a variety of things. It could be, for example, separately rented parking spaces. It could be a coin laundry in the basement. Possibly if your unit is big enough, maybe you have a vending machine in the lobby. Maybe you have ads on the side of your building. There's a variety of ways you can make additional income from properties. But obviously the core of your income in these properties is typically always going to be the rental income. So those all summed up is the gross income. Now, from that, you take out your expenses. Now, your expenses are going to be sort of just everything you spend to manage the property, to run the property, to keep the property rented out. So it's going to be management fees. If you hire a manager, the guy who's taking the calls to fix the toilet when it breaks at 2 a.m., that guy's going to need to be paid. Other management fees will need to be taken care of. Any sort of fix-its, any sort of maintenance, those things all need to be thrown in there. Then you've got taxes, you've got insurance, and if there's any common area utilities that you're footing the bill for as landlord, that'll be thrown in there too. So you've got all these things put together to get your expenses. So we talked about gross income, less your expenses. Now you've got your net income. Now that calculation can be fairly complex. There's a lot of little things to estimate, and you kind of don't know, well, how much is my maintenance going to be? There's different kind of rules of thumbs you can do. For instance, the number we often use in our office, which is fairly conservative, is we say, okay, we take gross income, we just multiply it by 65%. The idea there is that's going to include all of the insurance, all of the taxes, all of this maintenance. It's just sort of a gross number that often is actually going to be it's going to make the calculation worse than it will be in reality, but it allows us to underwrite conservatively. We've seen some of our borrowers will use a 70% number, some go as high as 75. Kind of the higher you get, the less room, the less padding you're giving yourself for things to sort of go weird. But that's a quick way to estimate it if you don't want to calculate everything down to the penny and you're looking to make a quick offer on a deal or something of that nature. So that's the income piece. So that's the top part of our equation here. Now the bottom part is what's your investment, and that's basically going to be your purchase price plus your improvement costs. So if you're buying the property for $100,000 and then you're throwing $100,000 into it, well, your divisor there is going to be $200,000. We can kind of think of an example here. Let's say you're buying a property for $100,000 and you get $1,000 per month from 2 units at that property. So over the course of the year, you're going to make $24,000 gross. Multiply that by 65, and let me just roughly do the math, probably wrongly in my head, and you're at what, $18,000. So that's a pretty high cap rate. Now, if you had to fix it up to get it to there, that might push your cap rate down a bit more. The trends in sort of what you'll find in how cap rates work is when you're in tougher areas that require a lot more maintenance, where there's not a lot of velocity in the market, meaning if you want to unload a property, you can't sell it, you'll be able to get high cap rates. But with that comes a cost. You're getting more money per dollar invested, but you're going to have to invest more time, which is probably going to could mean more maintenance costs, but at a minimum, it's going to be sort of a bigger headache. And, you're running the risk of being stuck with that property. In nicer neighborhoods, the cap rate can go down to as low as 4 or 5. Those are safer investments, but, it's not going to be all that great when all you're getting is a 4 or 5 cap. And then you have kind of the span in between. There's a big range of what you can do. And these are the sorts of numbers you're typically going to experience when you're trying to analyze the cap rate.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of stock traders have a saying, buy low, sell high. If you're looking to sell commercial properties, again, we're talking about you buying rental properties, but sometimes you'll buy commercial properties. You want to buy high and sell low, because when you sell a low cap rate, you can sell your property for that much more. And like what Vince said, a lot of times, even if it's not necessarily in a bad area, but it's a more rural area, you're going to be getting higher cap rates versus if you're downtown Chicago on Michigan Avenue, you could be looking at like a 1% cap rate on something that you're buying. But that's a very, very high density, high populated area versus buying a strip mall out in the hills of Kentucky where you might be able to get a 30% cap rate.
And that buy high, sell low is kind of counterintuitive, right? It's not the thing you're normally used to thinking in terms of, how you want to invest. But when you think about the way the math plays out, it actually makes sense. If you buy high, it basically means that your costs are lower. So the number you're dividing by is lower. And then you sell to somebody who's paying a bit more than you. If you spend $100,000 and they spend $150,000, well, their number is going to go down. Their percentage is going to go down, but it's the same property with the same income. So that's how those numbers work out. Counterintuitive, but when you actually run the numbers, it does indeed make sense.
Yeah, and if you're looking to, again, sell it to an end buyer, you want to stabilize that investment with long-term tenants, and then that's when you can incentivize your end buyer to pay for a lower cap rate when they purchase these investment properties. But again, if we're holding on to them, we want to try to get the highest cap rate possible, so that way we're getting our money back. Again, and just looking at a 10% cap rate, it's going to take me 10 years to get my full investment back just using that calculation.
And that buy high, sell low model is basically a turnkey sale model. The people who are buying these properties and selling them as turnkey rentals are doing that. They're buying at a higher cap rate, they're putting their money in, selling it for a bit more, and they're selling it for a lower cap rate.
The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. The first 50 people to contact us will be getting a copy of a rental deal analyzer, which will help you determine cap rate and some other things you should be looking at. We'll see you soon.
Mortgage rates are still near historic lows. If you're looking to buy your first home, upgrade, downsize, invest, or refinance, contact Matthew Ewald from First Advantage Mortgage, a Draper and Kramer company. Matthew's been a trusted mortgage consultant for over 13 years and has options to fit your unique needs. With 40-plus investors, call Matthew today at 630-376-0484. That's 630-376-0484. Or apply online at mortgagechicagoland.com. Company NMLS 2551, NMLS 198323. Illinois Residential Mortgage Licensee, Equal Housing Lender.
If you want to do real estate deals, you need to learn the systems. Visit fliptoriches.com for info on workshops happening the first Tuesday of every month. Meet me, Joshua Ingalls, and other active real estate investors in the Chicagoland area. We give the most value possible with networking and information for new and seasoned investors. We meet the first Tuesday of every month at 3009 North Kedzie in Chicago at 6 p.m. Check out fliptoriches.com. That's fliptoriches.com for all the info now.
Need capital for your real estate investment? Let Barnett Real Estate Investment Finance be your partner for fast, flexible, and certain capital. Since 2008, they've funded millions of home flippers, landlords, auction buyers, wholesalers, and more. And they'd like their next deal to be with you. Submit your preliminary application now at barnettcapital.com/prelim or call them at 224-205-7266. Again, that's 224-205-7266.
AM 560, The Answer. It's all about making money with real estate. Now, back to Real Estate Airwaves on AM 560, The Answer.
We are talking today about analyzing rentals. So we just spoke about cap rate. Now we're going to talk about ways you would increase income, which has the effect of bettering your cap rate. One thing that you're going to want to look at is the property you're taking on at market rent levels? You know, for instance, if you're in a market where a 2-bedroom, 1-bath is renting for $1,000 and you're buying a property where all of the units are renting at $800, well, you've got a below market rent there. The question is why? Was it poorly managed? Does it need work? There's a number of ways to kind of attack it, but ultimately you're going to want to look into how you can get that property up to market level rents so you can have a cap rate that improves after you've done your work to the property.
So some ways to improve that property, of course, is rehab that property. So again, like Vince said, if maybe you have a property with only 1 bathroom or perhaps only 2 bedrooms, adding an additional bedroom and bathroom in the basement will get you quite a bit more in rent. So, and then you could do simple things. For example, just from paint and carpet and sprucing up the place, you can also demand higher rent versus a property that's run down. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about being slumlords and that sort of thing. But if you're a slumlord, you get very, very low rents and you get bad tenants. So I like to have very, very nice properties where I can charge a little bit more because the tenants see the way my property is compared to some of the other properties, and I can ask a little bit more for rent for that property.
And these rehab projects, they're obviously calibrated to the market you're in. If you're at a market where the rents range from $800 to $1,200, you know, you're doing a certain level of finish as compared to when it's renting for $3,000 to $4,000 a month. So you want to try and generally go for better rehabs for the market that you're looking at so that you get the quality tenants in that area. You'll get more income and you'll just have less headache.
Yeah, and if you have a multi-unit building, a great way to improve it, let's say you buy it and a lot of the units are distressed. Well, the best way to do that is to perhaps rehab a vacant unit, bring it up to where it should be, and then you can actually shift tenants, or maybe when a tenant leaves, then you can go in and rehab that unit. But I know a lot buy and hold investors, what they'll do is they'll keep one property that they're always, or one unit that they're always fixing up. And once it's fixed up, they'll move, even if no one moves out, they'll move one of the tenants into that nicer unit. Now that tenant, you can give them maybe a little bit of a deal, but you can raise the rent on them because now they have a nicer unit.
So that's speaking how to actually get the per unit income up. Now, the next thing you can do to increase the return from one of these properties is to get the vacancies down. So if you're in a building with 5 units and 2 of them are vacant because the previous owner was just not managing the property well, or if you have 5 single family homes and you need to tenant those up, that can move you up from a very just imagine if it's $1,000 a month. You go from $3,000 a month to $5,000 a month just by getting those tenanted up. So making sure that you can get vacancies down to the absolute minimum helps you maximize investment every time.
Yeah, so getting vacancies down, we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next segment, but having a good property manager or being proactive with the management. A lot of times when I see properties with a lot of vacancies, a lot of times it's because they have a bad tenant in one of the units. And that one bad apple will ruin the bunch, meaning a lot of people don't want to live in a building where one tenant is causing a lot of issues. Maybe, just for example, maybe one of the tenants is selling drugs or something out of one of the units. Who in their right mind is going to want to live in a building like that? So getting rid of the bad apples will essentially help you get those vacancies down.
And it could even be, less dramatic. Maybe they just play loud music or their television's loud all the time. It's these kinds of sort of nuisance issues that can prevent people from saying, hey, I live in this great building. Why don't you take this unit that's open? So that affects both your vacancies and also your ability to charge, market rent.
Now, again, we're talking about how to increase your income. Bringing it up to the market rent. Sometimes you're buying these properties and some people are grandfathered in at a very, very, very low rent. And it might have made sense for the previous owner because that previous owner might have purchased the building 40 years ago, and so they don't have a mortgage on it. Well, if you have it leveraged and you have a mortgage, you need to bring those rents to where the market is. So that's a way to increase your total income. And of course, you can also add additional income streams. If you have a multi-unit building, you can add vending machines, laundry. If you have carports or garages, you can also rent those out as well.
So for something like, a coin laundry machine, it really is going to depend on the market. If you're in a market where everybody expects a unit in the building, that's not going to be an option for you. You have to kind of cater to market expectations. And if someone's in a market where they're expecting a washer dryer in their unit with no additional charge, you're going to be at a disadvantage if you're trying to milk some extra stream. So you kind of got to weigh the pros and cons. A vending machine, a coin laundry might bring you $100 a month. I don't know exactly what it would be, depend on the size, but will that be worth it if it's increasing your vacancies and forcing you to push rates down or push rents down so that you can keep it filled? So you've got to look into it and see if it fits your market. But if it does, it's a good thing to consider. Now, vending machines, if you're in a larger building, that's almost, if it fits the building, it's kind of like, why not? If you're trying to have a higher end rental, it's going to look a little incongruent to have a vending machine in your lobby or the like. But if you're in a building where it makes sense and there's a place for it where it makes sense, why not give it a go? It's worth taking a shot to see if you can get some additional income from there.
Yeah, a lot of times there are vending machine companies that will actually pay you to have their vending machine in your building where you actually don't have to be the one that stocks the vending machine and that sort of thing. So there's some opportunities there. Now, if you're in a busy street you'd have to check with the city ordinances, but a lot of times you can advertise not only the rentals in your building, but perhaps you might be able to run billboards, small advertisements as well, and create, again, additional streams of income on your rental properties.
Another thing to consider is looking at what additional spaces can be used for. For instance, we have a borrower in Pennsylvania who bought I think about a 12 unit, a fairly large building with a large number of units. And the building happens to it was formerly a bank. So it has all this interesting sort of space downstairs. That's, you can't convert it into living space, but it's big open space. So they've actually set up a business where they rent out the basement space as sort of an event hall. So, groups will have meetings there, maybe they have parties there, that sort of thing. And they've created an additional stream of income from a space that, it doesn't really fit into a residential rental play, but it's there and they found a way to generate additional income from it.
I personally don't like buying properties on busy streets, but one of my good friends, he actually finds properties on busy streets. And the reason why he does that is because a lot of times you can get a much better deal on those properties. And he looks for properties not only on a busy street, but also that have some land with that property. And what he does is he buys these rentals and then he actually adds a storage unit in addition to the house that's renting out to a family. He then also puts a large storage unit on that property, and then he rents out the individual storage units. So he increases his income drastically. And he also uses this property, he uses a large 4-foot by 4-foot sign that says, "We buy houses," with his phone number on it. And he keeps it up all the time because he has all these cars that are driving by. And then, of course, he has another sign which advertises his storage units. And usually with storage, once people buy a storage unit, most of the times they'll keep that storage unit for years. And there's very, very minimal maintenance associated with owning storage types of properties.
And we spoke about parking briefly. That's another obvious one. I mean, that's probably one of the most common kinds of additional income you can get from a property in places where that makes sense. Obviously, you're probably not going to charge separately for parking at a single-family home rented out in the suburbs. But in the city, it's pretty often that you'll be able to do this. We've seen borrowers have 3 spaces in the back of one of their buildings, and they build into their capitalization rate calculation that each of those is going to sell for or rent for $100, $150 a month, something like that. Depends a lot on the area and whether you want to include it in the rent, but it can be a common additional source of income if you're in the right area for it.
The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. The first 50 people to contact us will be getting a copy of the rental deal analyzer we use to analyze properties. We'll see you soon.
You're an investor, a lender in commercial real estate, or you're an attorney, and you use a title company. National Title Solutions wants a chance to be your title company. Give them a shot at your business, and you'll find out why they're the best choice. Most title companies keep banking hours and have no flexibility. National Title Solutions will do whatever it takes on your timetable. You'll save money, too. Give them an opportunity and see the difference. Convenient offices all over. National Title Solutions. Call 800-NTS-2700. 800-NTS-2700.
This is Joshua Ingalls, broker with United Real Estate and radio show host. When I need to pre-qualify a buyer, I use Matthew Ewald from First Advantage Mortgage, a Draper & Kramer company. I've worked with Matthew for over 2 years, and I highly recommend him to all my clients and investors. Call Matthew Ewald today at 630-376-0484. That's 630-376-0484, or apply online at mortgagechicagoland.com.
Company NMLS 2551, NMLS 198323, Illinois Residential Mortgage Licensee, Equal Housing Lender.
The Chicagoland Real Estate Investment Group invites you to build your network in real estate investing and learn from the region's experts. There's no charge to attend, and there won't be any hard sell for expensive courses. Join us on the 4th Monday each month in the North Shore. For more information, visit us at meetup.com/ChicagolandREI. Again, that's meetup.com/ChicagolandREI. Meetup.com/ChicagolandREI.
Need capital for your real estate investment? Let Barnett Real Estate Investment Finance be your partner for fast, flexible, and certain capital. Since 2008, they've funded millions of home flippers, landlords, auction buyers, wholesalers, and more. And they'd like their next deal to be with you. Submit your preliminary application now at barnettcapital.com/prelim or call them at 224-205-7266. Again, that's 224-205-7266.
AM 560, The Answer. Now, back to the show that gives you the insider info. Real Estate Airwaves on AM 560, The Answer.
Welcome back. Today we are talking about how to analyze rental properties. The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. Again, I'm very active in my fix and flip business. But with my rental properties, I am not very active with that because I look at that as passive income. And in order to be truly passive with rental properties, you need to have a good management company who's going to take those nuisance calls, collect rents, and do all the things that a property manager does. I'm not looking to acquire rental properties to be a full-time job. I'm looking at it as a long-term wealth strategy. Whether I'm here in Chicago or I'm in the beach somewhere in the Caribbean, I'm still getting my month or my rent every single month.
So that ties into our theme of the day of looking at how to analyze a deal in terms of the cost of management. We spoke earlier about how one of the expenses you need to consider is the cost, and that cost includes this management piece here. So you have to look at what monies are going to need to go out in order to be able to analyze the deal. So when looking at a property, what needs to get done? You know, the main things are going to be leasing, handling issues that come up at the property, the regular maintenance, lawn care, snow removal, little things get broken, getting those little things fixed, that kind of thing, taking care of common areas. And then, of course, collecting the rent. So these are the things you're going to be paying out for in terms of management costs.
Yeah, and again, you may want to hire that out, but if you're just starting out, you may want to learn property management yourself. Again, I don't recommend that if you have a very, very large building, but you may want to start small and maybe with a single-family home, and you may want to give it a shot. So depending on the number of units, property management, if you're doing it yourself, can be a lot of work.
So this cost can basically come out of your pocket in one of two ways. You can pay someone to handle it, or time. It can be very costly in terms of your time to handle these things. Now, of course, your time isn't going to negatively affect your calculation of the profitability, but it is a cost to you how much time you spend on this instead of dealing with other transactions, how much time you spend on this instead of hanging out with your kids, whatever it may be. So it's another cost that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, if you're a property manager and you're managing your own properties, keep in mind a lot of times you're just putting out fires, meaning there's a lot of issues that come up. So, for example, in the winter, maybe a furnace goes out or, again, a toilet breaks and you got to take care of that. Having that property manager will help alleviate those nuisance calls. And there are a couple different strategies you can use for property management. One of those is literally using a leasing agent. Again, this typically costs, usually they'll charge you maybe 1 month's rent for placing a tenant. And then in commercial, though, it could be 2 to 3 months. And then generally they're taking about 10% of the income in residential. And that cost goes down a little bit when you're talking about commercial.
So when you have someone leasing out your property, generally they're going to need to be a leasing agent, and they're going to have a license to do that. For the management piece, that's generally not the case. So usually you'll see a break between who can lease and who can manage, and usually they're not overlapping, although some can do both. So on the generic management side, where they're handling calls, they're collecting the rent, there are management companies that will pretty much do most of this. Sometimes it can be as low as 1% to 2% of the total rent. We recently rented out a property, and I think the manager takes $100 a quarter or something like that. It's not very labor intensive, so his cost isn't that high.
Yeah, website you'll want to check out is mylandlordhelper.com if you live here in the Chicago area. Linda Liberatore owns that company, and she helps with people. She doesn't do a full management, but she helps collect rents. She'll take those calls, and she'll, dispatch contractors and that sort of thing to fix those small issues, so you're not dealing with the little things, and it saves you a little bit of money.
If you decide that you're not going to put the time in and you do want to get a manager, well, then the question becomes, well, how do I select a manager? One good question to always ask them, if they're going to be helping you place tenants, you want to ask them, how do you do it? They should be hitting up the obvious things like Craigslist and the MLS, which are very common places, but what else do they do? The ones that go that extra mile will be the ones you probably want to work with.
Yeah, for example, one of the property managers I work with that does a lot of my property management, he has a really great relationship with the Section 8 office in Chicago, and he actually a lot of times gets the cream of the crop when he places tenants. For example, one of my tenants has her doctorate degree, and she's a Section 8 tenant. Now, again, he goes above and beyond what most property managers are doing. So if they're just slapping it up on the MLS, to be honest, they're not bringing a lot of value. So really find out, what are they doing to bring you those quality tenants. Again, my tenants have a better education level than me. I'm fine with that. The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. The first 50 people to contact us will be getting a copy of the deal analyzer that we use when we analyze rental properties. We'll see you soon.
Real estate agents are cheap. Many agents will only market your home on the MLS and put a sign up. Demand more. Joshua Ingalls invests in aggressive marketing, including high-def video, 3D virtual tours, professional photography, a custom website, and mailers, so you can get the most amount of money for your home in the shortest amount of time. Call Joshua Ingalls, broker with United Real Estate Chicago, at 630-544-1504 for a free home valuation, or visit HomeTeamIL.com to learn more.
Need capital for your real estate investment? Let Barnett Real Estate Investment Finance be your partner for fast, flexible, and certain capital. Since 2008, they've funded millions of home flippers, landlords, auction buyers, wholesalers, and more. And they'd like their next deal to be with you. Submit your preliminary application now at barnettcapital.com/prelim or call them at 224-205-7266. Again, that's 224-205-7266.
AM 560, The Answer. Now, back to the show with real estate info you won't find anywhere else. Real Estate Airwaves is on AM 560, The Answer.
Welcome back. Today we are talking about analyzing rental deals. One thing to consider when calculating if a rental deal is going to be profitable to you is whether you need to do any evictions once you purchase the property. Reasons you may need to do so is if there's already a defaulted tenant in there, one who hasn't been paying rent, or perhaps you have one of the bad apples we mentioned before, one of the people who's doing something other tenants don't like, which is keeping vacancies high, which is keeping rent low. You're probably going to want to build that into your overall calculation. And evictions can be a sizable cost. Typically, when you're at the point of evicting somebody, you're not getting rent from that unit. So now you've got a unit that, for however long this process takes, is basically providing you with nothing. And to the extent that that tenant is a nuisance to other tenants, it's also going to be maybe preventing other units from getting filled because that known issue there.
Yeah, a lot of times when you're having to evict someone, you can do it for non-payment. You could also evict someone if somebody's on a month-to-month lease. You can do what's called a 30-day notice. And you actually don't need to give a reason why you're evicting them. So, again, if you have a problematic tenant, it might be worth doing that 30-day notice to get them out of there. And something you may want to look at, which is a little bit easier to do, and tenants, usually if in the past when I've had to evict tenants, I give them an option. I let them know, hey, I'm either going to evict you or I can give you cash for keys. If you're out by this date, I'll give you this much money. If you're out by this date, I'll give you this much money. For example, if you're out in 15 days, I'll give you $1,000. If it takes you 30 days to leave, then I'll give you $500. And again, I want the house in a broom swept condition. Now, cash for keys, I do give that option to someone if I'm looking to evict them. But I give them some sort of timeline to get back to me because I don't want to delay the eviction process if I need to start that as well.
And the whole goal here at the end of the day is to get the problem tenant out of the property as quickly and as cheaply as possible. When you do cash for keys, you can spend a few grand, sure, but you'll save time. So you're basically trading this. And if that gets you a tenant in there who's paying rent normally a month earlier, you probably just made back your cash for keys amount.
Yeah, I mean, I never like rewarding bad behavior, but, again, we're running a business, so we have to look at it and see what makes the most sense for our particular situation. And, evictions are an unfortunate reality of owning rental properties, but the key is really to screen the tenants properly. And, there are a lot of services that do that. The thing I like doing is not talking to their current landlord when I'm looking to place a tenant. I want to talk to their landlord 2 landlords ago or 3 landlords ago because they're going to give you the honest truth. A landlord might tell you they're the greatest tenant in the world because they want that tenant out of their building to go to your building. So placing tenants, you need to do the proper screening.
So let's say cash for keys doesn't fly and they say, no, I'm not leaving. Well, then you got to actually dive into the eviction process. And the place you're going to want to start there is with an attorney who knows what they're doing. And, that's obviously going to be an expense, but you want someone there who really knows the law to make sure that you're fully abiding by everything the law requires.
Yeah, here in Chicago, you need to do a notice for everyone, all the adults in the properties. So when you serve someone a 5-day notice, at least in Chicago, I actually, let's say, for example, I have 4 adults in the building. I actually have to give them 5. I have to give them 5 5-day notices, 4 for the 4 adults, and then also an additional 5-day notice to any unknown occupants. So that's the very first step if you're going to try and do this yourself.
Once that notice has been provided, then you're actually looking to go ahead and file with the court. And this process is, it's here in Chicago, but it's also pretty generic across the country. Notice, filing with the court, serving. So you're filing the documentation you with the court. Your attorney can help you determine exactly what's needed for that. Then you're moving on to actually serving the tenants of the eviction notice.
Yeah, and usually the service is going to be done by the sheriff there, or you can use other professional companies which will do the servicing. You can't do the servicing, so this is servicing for the court appearance. So there are such things out there, or such people, which I call professional renters, and they know how to scam the system. So they know if they're never served, they can essentially live in that property forever until that they're served. So service is very, very important. So if you have a professional, quote unquote, tenant, you might want to hire one of these companies that will serve them. So I know there's a company out there, they actually dress up like a pizza guy, and the people might open the door and they thinking they're getting free pizza, and they get served. Now, if I started a company, what I would do is I would pretend to be Publishers Clearinghouse with a large check and a camera crew. When they open the door, we'll give them our notice for the court service. Yeah,
these are the tricks of the trade that a good service agent will be able to bring to the table for you. Once they're served, then you got to go to court, and then you've got the judge making a decision. The judge will often give them time. For instance, judges will rarely evict in winter and put someone out on the street when it's freezing cold. So it will take time to actually get the thing carried out. It might take all the way until spring, and that will be a period of time during which you won't be getting rent from that unit.
The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. The first 50 people to contact us will be getting a copy of the analyzer we use to analyze rental properties. We'll see you soon.
You're an investor, a lender in commercial real estate, or you're an attorney, and you use a title company. National Title Solutions wants a chance to be your title company. Give them a shot at your business, and you'll find out why they're the best choice. Most title companies keep banking hours and have no flexibility. National Title Solutions will do whatever it takes on your timetable. You'll save money, too. Give them an opportunity and see the difference. Convenient offices all over. National Title Solutions. Call 800-NTS-2700. 800-NTS-2700.
Need capital for your real estate investment? Let Barnett Real Estate Investment Finance be your partner for fast, flexible, and certain capital. Since 2008, they've funded millions of home flippers, landlords, auction buyers, wholesalers, and more. And they'd like their next deal to be with you. Submit your preliminary application now at barnettcapital.com/prelim or call them at 224-205-7266. Again, that's 224-205-7266.
AM 560, The Answer. It's all about making money with real estate. Now, back to Real Estate Airwaves on AM 560, The Answer.
So today we've been speaking about analyzing rental deals. We started out going into the cap rate, or one of the prime numbers that people use to look at rental properties. And again, cap rate is basically your net income over the property divided by your total expenditure, which is basically your purchase price plus any rehab costs you have there. We then dove into how you can increase your income at the property. And there's a variety of ways to do that, ranging from rehabbing the property to make a higher quality property, to filling in your vacant property or vacant units so that you get more rental per the entire building, getting rid of problems that are leading to that, like a bad apple tenant who is causing noise nuisance or other kind of problem that prevents you from being able to increase rents to market rate rents, or prevents you from getting rid of vacancies. We then talked about other methods you can use to increase the income, anything from renting out parking spaces separately if that's appropriate in your market, to adding a coin laundry, to advertisement if you're in the appropriate place for that and the regulations allow it, to storage even. There's a whole variety of ways you can try and milk additional income that will supplement the main income of the rental that you're getting from the property. We then dove into one of the main costs of rental properties, which of course is managing them. How do you get tenants in there? How do you deal with phone calls at 2 a.m.? How do you collect rent? And you can either do it yourself and spend the time doing all that, or you can work with professionals who do it, and we spoke about ways you can screen them and find the best that you can work with. We then spoke about evictions, which is a cost that you may have to bear right from day one. If you're taking a property that's subject to some distress where there's problem tenants, maybe it's a bad apple tenant, maybe it's a tenant who's just not paying rent, maybe it's a so-called professional renter who knows the rental laws very well and is trying to just stay there as long as possible, paying as little as possible. These are all the kinds of issues that will lead you to an eviction process, and we talked about how you can maybe avoid that with cash for keys, but if not, you should hire a qualified lawyer who really knows what they're doing and can make sure you're abiding by every law in the eviction process to get those problematic tenants out so that you can get good tenants in there, get your property at the market rate, and get full vacancy or full occupancy so that you can maximize your profit on these rental properties.
Yeah, again, really with rental properties, it all comes down to screening your tenants properly. You know, one of my good friends who owns a lot of rentals on Chicago's south side and east side, he has a strategy he uses where he has a candy bowl in his office, and these are the good candies. I'm talking the king-size Butterfingers and Reese's and Snicker bars. And he has the family and all their children across the table from him, and he sets the candy bowl in the middle. And if the kids attack that candy bowl like little gremlins, well, he knows that that's probably how they're going to attack his property. If the children ask their parents very calmly and politely, you know, "Mother, can I please have a candy?" And the mother then asks him, you know, "Would it be all right if, you know, my son has a candy?" These are good signs that these tenants are going to treat your property with respect. There's a lot of different tools I used to meet my potential tenants at 7 a.m. on Saturday mornings. If they're responsible enough to get up at 7 a.m. to meet me on a Saturday, they're probably going to be a good tenant. The number here is 855-5-AIRWAVES, or you can visit realestateairwaves.com. The first 50 people to contact us will be getting a rental deal analyzer. Now, don't forget, we meet on the first Tuesday of every month, so our next meeting is going to be on February the 7th. We meet at 3009 North Kedzie. You can visit fliptoriches.com to learn more. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Real Estate Airwaves on AM 560, The Answer. Come back next Sunday at noon for more insider real estate information from Joshua and Vincent. You can listen to past shows, contact them, and get free exclusive content at realestateairwaves.com. That's realestateairwaves.com.